Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett, and this is episode 171. It is July the 28th, 2025, and today our guest is a longtime coach and teacher around the Beckley area, Mr. Dale Stafford. Welcome.
Thank you, Wayne.
And, the first recollection I have of you was when you wrestled at Beckley Junior High. And I know you had played football there also. What about your younger days? Did you play youth sports when you were younger, or who was your first coach?
Well, growing up, my dad was my baseball coach in Little League. Of course, when I was 2, I was diagnosed with retina cancer, retinoblastoma, and that set me back a few years, starting school and stuff like that. But I was one of 10 kids, so we're a big Catholic family, and there was no room to feel sorry for yourself or anything like that. So
how many?
There was 10 of us all together.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm number 9 and number 7 out of boys, and I have a younger sister, and 4 of us actually went to Woodrow Wilson High School. My dad was in construction, and he did the turnpike from Beckley to Princeton in the late 70s, and it brought us to Beckley. And I'll never forget showing up at the wrestling building at Woodrow with my older brother Mark, and we were about a week late for football. My dad was taking us around, make sure we got put in right when we got here, and coach came out and he asked, my brother Mark got out, and after he saw him, he said, well, yeah, we got room for him since he just moved here. And, of course, they went on and won a state championship that year. But, I played behind him and my brother Marty. Marty ended up having a scholarship to Marshall and tore his knee out. And but young, my dad was mainly the main one with my eye and stuff. I didn't play too much baseball and stuff. And then I did St. Francis for a year, and then I decided that, I need to go to Beckley Stratton with all my friends and play with them. So Wayne Bennett and Jack Richmond, they were my first real football coaches. Wayne Peters, yes. I'm sorry, Wayne Peters. And, it was funny.
Those are good coaches, right?
Oh, yeah. You were talking about, wrestling, knew me as a wrestler. Well, Wayne Peters, I went to try out for play basketball, and I'll never forget, you probably couldn't get away with this now, but Wayne put his arm around me and said, Stafford, you're going to be a hell of a wrestler. You need to go down there. But if I said that to a kid now, I'd probably be in a couple parent meetings and all that stuff. But, naturally I just listened, and I went and started wrestling, and that's just got into it. Of course, having brothers all the time beating you up and whipping on you a little bit, that kind of got you ready.
I remember Marty real well. He's in the Hall of Fame at Woodrow, and he passed away, didn't he?
Mark, that was Mark. He was the one who played on the state championship. Yeah.
Is Marty
still alive? He's doing really well. Works for Golden and Stafford Construction Company up in D.C. And my brother founded that like 25 years ago, and he's since sold it. But Marty stayed on as the president of the company, and they do multi-million-dollar jobs up in the D.C. area. And
you only had one sister?
No, I had 3 sisters.
3 sisters.
Yeah, and one of them's passed away due to cancer as well. And but my oldest sister and my younger sister are still kicking. There's 8 of us still going. So, there's a lot of joys with a lot of people, but there's also people who don't realize there's a lot of sorrows that come with it too. Big families. So. But
where did you live in Beckley?
I lived on Maxwell Hill, up there at Maxwell Hill, kind of like a little sharp turn past the Baptist church up there, and we lived back over into the corner there. Yeah, so.
Now, I remember you wrestled 167 in the 9th grade and won the county's championship, and we used to take the county champions down to Huntington. They didn't have very many tournaments back in those days, and always tried to get, I worked at the Y and always tried to get the county kids a little more exposure. So we would go to Huntington, which was one of the few tournaments, and they had an open tournament, a high school tournament, and junior high tournament. And you went with us as a county.
Got my eyes woke up a little bit.
Well, funny story, I think it was the year before, we went down and Lieutenant Colonel Don Atkins, he had his son Mark and those guys that went to Park, and we took a van and took all the county champions down, and Joey Colacerto and John Wheeler went with us. I think they were a year ahead of you.
Yes, sir.
And so we got down there like 7:30 in the morning, and of course it wasn't the most organized tournament in the world, and it was slow, and they only had like 2 mats or whatever. Wrestled all day long, and John and Joey ended up being in the same weight class, and they both made the finals. And we sit there, and of course it was heavyweight in junior high, and they didn't even get on the mat to wrestle each other until 11:15.
Oh, Lord.
And the whole time, later on, I thought, man, if I'd have went up and asked if they could just go ahead and wrestle,
right,
and go home.
We got out of here.
I didn't think about that, but on the way home, all the guys are dead tired. Everybody's asleep. Colonel Atkins is asleep. I'm driving the Y van. I'm so tired. I can barely keep my eyes open. It starts pouring the rain. And we get on the turnpike, and I mean, I'm really almost unsafe, driving, going 35 miles an hour, and I roll the window down, and I'm actually sprinkling water on the place to stay away.
Wreck with all relic.
Didn't have cell phones either, so back then when we got home, we had to take people home. That was a long
as long as the tournament probably.
But those were days that you remember. Now, when you went to high school, you played center some, didn't you?
Yes, I played center and defensive end is what I played, and I ended up, of course, it was just 10th, 11th, and 12th back then, and Woodrow had a program at the time that, when you were going in 10th grade, your goal really, realistically, unless you were a real heck of an athlete, was to make the travel squad.
Yeah.
And of course, both my brothers were Hall of Fame, and he was like, man, you better fight anyway, so that fighting got me on the bus a lot of times, with the Raiders and, scout team and stuff like that. But
you guys had some pretty good teams.
Yeah, we went the year Joey Colacerto, my junior year, we were 8-2, and we actually missed like 4 field goals, that could have won some games, and not the fault of the kicker. It wasn't Paul Legg's fault, I'm sure the snap had something to do with it, the hold and all that kind of stuff. But you don't forget those kind of things,
Yeah.
We that was a pretty good team. You had Harold Harrison, like a 6'3", 245-pound tailback. Vernon Knight that still holds a lot of records, and Buck Thompson and those kind of guys,
Well, you played with Chappelle too.
Yeah, John and Tony Chappelle,
yeah.
And Tony Chappelle was probably one of the most physical defensive guys I've seen in high school, and I remember that. He was a year behind me, but we were down at Logan, and Tony went off to the sideline. I was calling just looked around, and Tony went out. I said, hey, we got to get Tony out here. I was a senior, and he said, I cracked my helmet. The referee's making me go out. And that was back when those new bikes came out. Well, he cracked 2 helmets that year, so that tells you a little bit about Tony Chappelle, you know what I mean? But, I had a lot of fond memories of those guys,
Well, you weren't really that big. I mean, I can remember you guys had Bluefield's number though during those times. Bluefield used to be the game.
Oh yeah.
And I know 2 years that you played that you beat them, and then one of those games you intercepted a pass, and one you got a fumble. 2 years in a row.
Well,
actually it turned the game around. The pass.
Right. I played defensive end, and of course. The individual group, it was Coach Colacerto and Tom Parham. And Coach Parham, he would always pick 2 or 3 things for me to try to stop. He's like, be on the lookout when the ball goes away from you. This is what's coming back. Don't just take off and run. And he had schooled me all week on when the quarterback does a quick pitch away, that they're not really a quick pitch team, so they're doing it to set up the throwback to the quarterback. And sure enough, third quarter, it came. And heck, it just hit me in the belly, you know what I mean? I ended up fumbling out of bounds like 10 yards later, but that was a big moment. That was good.
And of course, it's always nice to beat Bluefield.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime. But now, in wrestling in high school, you went to the state tournament twice, I think, and
Yes.
maybe 3 times. I
Yes.
don't know. But,
No, twice. I wrestled my junior and my senior year.
but your
for
junior
Rocky Powell.
year, you actually wrestled up like 180 something. Larry Farley was at 167, and then the next year you came back down and wrestled 167.
Yeah, Larry decided to go down, and I just got off appendicitis and lost about 20 pounds. And Dave Houck, a good friend of mine that played football, he wanted to wrestle, and he was about 96, 95, so he decided to go to 85. And really, just people like Rocky Powell just made you want to work. Rocky did, and same with Zaffaratis. And us guys just got together and hey, if you go down, I'll go down. It probably wasn't a good decision for me, but I lost some weight and was irritable like everybody else, but it really didn't have much effect on my career as a wrestler. I wasn't much of a wrestler. I was, used to brawling my brothers, and I'd either pin you or I didn't get pinned, but back in them days you had.
I know one year those years you lost in a state tournament to Jezero from Fairmont, I think.
Right.
And I'm good friends with that family. And
Yeah, I was in the finals at the Pepsi-Cola Invitational up there that one year. And it was, you talking about stuff that's different. We actually went home and spent the night with Fairmont wrestlers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people don't know what kind of tight-knit wrestling is, but, they didn't care. As long as you came and wrestled, man, they'd put you up and feed you and, all that kind of stuff. It was a good thing we weighed in the night before we left, because I wouldn't have made weight the next day, going to that lady's house and eating all the spaghetti and the bread and stuff.
Well, we went to St. Albans one time and stayed all night, and stayed in a recreation center down there. And they had all these game machines and stuff. Of course, that was new back then.
Yeah.
Well, the kids were sleeping in sleeping bags on the floor and everything. And so the next morning, I got up and everybody's, we got to wrestle again, and everybody's still groggy, and they had eaten well and everything. And the way I woke them up is I put a quarter in the jukebox. I think the song was Roller Coaster or something. Woke everybody up. But those are things you don't forget. But now, did you play baseball any in high school or anything?
No, I didn't. I've never played baseball, and then I started coaching. My Ryan, my oldest son, and my only son, and that's about the only stint I had in baseball. I coached him all the way up, and we did the travel thing. I could remember when he was 6 and 7, we'd go down to Kernersville, and there's a guy named John Furrow. I don't think John's passed away, but John started a little team, and I got with him, and we started taking the best kids, kind of like what you did, from Raleigh County and a couple from Greenbrier County, and we went and played baseball, and we got better. And 8 years later, I think all of those kind of guys played some kind of sport in college. It was either football or baseball.
Really?
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, that was some good times.
Back to the baseball in a minute. Let's when you graduated from high school, you went down to Tech.
Yeah, Froggy Young drove me down there and asked me if I would be interested in going and looking at West Virginia Tech. I didn't know where it was at or anything. I'd went to Concord, and they explained to me that they didn't give scholarships out to freshmen. They back then they gave them to juniors and seniors, and that was pretty much why they were pretty good, because they got older people to stay around and they paid for their education back then. And so I ended up going down there, and pretty much Jim Hill, he watched my film and stuff. And he called me and said, "I'd like to have you." And of course, when he said that, I was like, okay. I didn't really need the scholarship. I was on a voc rehab with my eye. Larry Walker here in town took care of me, my neighbor, and introduced us to that possibility and stuff. So I knew in the back of my head I didn't need a scholarship. I just wanted to go play college football. And Coach Hill, I could tell he was going to give me a chance, you know what I mean, and kind of wanted me. I just wanted to go somewhere where they thought I could play.
Yeah.
So I ended up going down there with John Chappelle and Dave Houck, and, stayed 4 years, got married, and ended up coaching there for 2 years before I came back to Beckley.
Really?
Yes.
I was going to ask you about that. Well, you had you ended up playing defensive line. You got up to about 250 or something.
Oh, I was like 275. So
really?
So much for that myth of stunting your growth as a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Number 52.
Number 52, yeah. And number 52 in the program.
I think I saw.
That's what my mom used to say.
I used to go down and watch Tech play Concord, and I started going down there back when Dwight Rigai and some of them guys played back in the old days, and then usually sometimes that was a homecoming game or whatever, and I'd go down and watch. They had some pretty good ball clubs.
I tell you what,
Scott Glenn, you played with Scott.
Oh yeah. He was our tailback, but I played with some guys. I don't know how Valley didn't win state championships, because on that team we had 5 or 6 kids from Valley. Duke Wallington and Calvin Wallace ended up being NAIA All-Americans, you know what I mean? And we competed for 2 years for, championships. We ended up we beat Shepherd one year, but lost the championship to them over a technicality somehow. But, it was, people don't understand that league, they're men. And that's the first thing you find out of running back in that league is not a defensive lineman in high school. They're men, and they'll run you over. They might not be 6'4", 6'5", but they're still heavy and they're still men, and they hit. That's a brutal league, actually, because they don't have all the benefits some of the other big time, Yeah. They used to drag you off to the side, man. If you was able to come back, you came back, or... I never forget, I went down there and made the team and stuff like that, and come back and got a helmet off Coach Colcerto because it was better than the ones they were giving away down there. So it's kind of...
I hated it, really. I could understand why they did it, but I hated it when Tech got out of the MEC now and NAIA, and they're kind of playing, and of course they don't have football anymore, but the basketball and wrestling, all that, the wrestling teams all as far away as Georgia, and I'd love to see them get back in there, but the bad part about NCAA, once you drop out, it's hard to get back in. They're vengeful.
I can't see us. Yeah, I can't see. There's actually a push now. I'm getting notifications about dinners and stuff for Tech and maybe rebuilding it. I can't help but think WU, if they wanted it, we could have it here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't think it'd be on that scale. I think it would be an NAIA and, kind of like Bluefield State and stuff. But, it costs a lot of money to run a program. You know that. And, but I think if they did and they just got Southern West Virginia kids, I think they would be well served. Well, I think they could do pretty good. I really do.
Well, maybe that's an opportunity for you, Coach College.
Well, I can tell you that. No. I coached with Coach Surratt for about 8 years. I know what it's like coaching on the college level as far as time and stuff like that. It's just, I'm at the stage now, Wayne. I just... it's a lot of work. People have no idea the amount of time people put into it, and you have to put your time in.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't want to leave anything to chance, you certainly don't want to leave anything to chance. So,
I think, I really think a football program, if it's done the right way, it can be beneficial, and I'd love to see something as far as Tech's concerned, but in these days and times when they're laying off professors and things, it's hard to unless somebody just drops a big check on you.
I think that's the way it has to be, kind of like Linville with that fella up there, and they got that Ike Morris up there, and thank God they do, because he backs everything they do, and
they got the facilities for everything.
That's right.
Softball, baseball.
Yeah,
wrestling.
pretty much a billionaire sitting there, and he says go do it, and you got people like Trickett and Mr. Keller, Coach Keller up there, and they know how to coach and they know how to win games too. They got a good program.
And their coaches, from what I've heard, get paid more than most Division coaches do. So it's...
My son worked under Coach Keller. He went to Concord. Coach Keller had come to the house, and Ryan was his first recruit. And of course, Ryan got down there and tore his knee up 2 times in a row. He was a linebacker and a running back or a quarterback in high school. But when we went down there, they used him as a defensive end. He'd gotten bigger and. everybody just moves up in defense. Instead of being a slow linebacker or, medium linebacker, you go be a fast end. Instead of being a slow end, you go be a fast tackle and put weight on.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to put a little weight on than it is speed, I'll tell you that.
Well, you had, so you coached 2 years after you graduated. You got married when you was in school.
Yeah, I was.
Was your wife a Kinder?
Yes, Michelle Kinder was her.
Chuck Kinder?
No, not Yogi Kinder or any of those guys. No.
Okay.
No.
But
I don't think so. Not Chuck Kinder, but you go down there to West Virginia Tech and you look at the coaches that they've produced. There's been Bob Goebel and a lot of real good coaches come out of that area. Steve Edwards and those guys and down in the valley and.
Goebel there for a while, he was just an offensive genius to a certain extent. I mean, he was hard to handle.
He was throwing the ball when nobody else was, kind of like Coach Keller. And, I was never around that kind of football. You know what I mean? We were always win up front and that kind of stuff. But watching that and, Coach Keller, when I went and watched him play at Concord, you talking about a guy who likes to throw the ball. I mean, he'd throw the ball and if we got an interception, I'd be upset for 3 series. With Coach Keller, it's just like eating a donut. It doesn't matter. It's over now. Let's go on. And those real passing guys, that's just the way they believe. But
Goebel used to, even on defense, he'd have guys. The whole defense would be standing up.
Oh yeah,
it was wild.
My dad actually tried getting me to do that when I was the coordinator at Beckley. At one time, he was like, "Man, why are you wasting your time and all that?" And it's like 4 years later that happened. So it's kind of interesting,
But now, so you. After 2 years down there, you came to Beckley. You got a job right off the bat at Woodrow.
Coach Colcerdo had called me, and they said they had the driver's ed open, and Racine Thompson was the superintendent, and they said it was my job if I wanted to, come up and apply for it. So that's what I did, and I traveled back and forth. My wife worked at a bank after she graduated, and then when we moved up here, she went back to school to get her teaching degree. And, we've been in Beckley ever since.
Now, you... when Art Lambert came over there, I was helping him at Park, and then he came over, and I scouted a couple years for you guys, and then my son played his senior year, and then I came back and scouted some more about 5 years after that, and I mean, of course, you guys traded films and stuff too, but I would go, and I would scout the team that you were going to play the next week. So I never got to watch you guys play too much because I was always somewhere else. But it was around 93, 94. It's when Randy Moss played at Duke.
Oh.
So I always got to scout. I saw Randy Moss play 3 times in high school, and it was against South Charleston, who was they were good.
Right.
They were really good. It's 3 of the best high school games I've ever seen in my life was South Charleston DuPont during that time. And athletes, DuPont itself had Bobby Howard and Moss.
Jason Williams, he's forward with him. I mean, he wasn't too bad.
Fout. They were, and South Charleston had so many. They literally played platoon. They had a kickoff team. They had a punt return team. Was
that Bryce Casto? Was he the coach then? Oh yeah, and Bryce did a great job.
They played 45 kids and never got tired because but Moss did everything. He kicked off, he returned punts, he returned kickoffs.
He was a nightmare. Yeah, you just knew it was going to happen. The only hope you had was he hurt his ankle or something, forgot his shoulder pads or something. Well, you didn't even forget his shoulder pads. Well, Dick Whitman would get him a new pair of pads if he had to come in your room and get them. But I'll never forget one of those early years. I think he was a sophomore. We went and played Moss down there at their place, and my dad jumped on the bus and rode with us he came up from Virginia, and he rode down. He was a big fan, and my dad used to cook pigs and all that stuff for the team back in way before season ever started. He did it for 24 years, him and Dave Lilly. But I'll never forget him get on the bus, and he looked at me and he said, "That number 83," he said, "he's the best high school kid I've ever seen." And he was just a sophomore then. You know what I mean? Of course, they were talking about Randy Moss. But Randy Moss's brother, people don't realize that he played for Minnesota for 9 years, defensive line. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Now, ironically, Moss never got the Kennedy Award when he was in high school, and probably the senior year was because he had gotten a little bit of trouble, and probably the reason he didn't get it. But there was a guy from Magnolia who was a good ball player, Mark Cesar.
Yeah.
He won it 2 years, but it was a travesty that Moss didn't.
Everybody knew, and no offense to the guy that won it, but that's all, it's kind of politics. But anybody ever went and watched a football game knew who the best and the most. We know who the person that would get picked first if you lined everybody up in the state. You know who you're taking first, and that was without a doubt Randy Moss.
I never saw Kurt Warner play, but I did see Alexander from South Charleston. I saw him play junior high ball. And he was awesome, at that time. But
I hear a lot of good things about him. Rocky Powell was at Parkersburg South, and he told me that they played them in the playoffs, and he said that guy was unreal. Robert Alexander. He said he was for real.
There's some players around. Well, now you didn't stay at Woodrow coaching the whole time. How you moved around?
Well, I stayed at football for about 17, 18 years with Pete, and then when my son started getting up in the middle school age, I thought it's time to go and take care of that bunch of kids. Because, like I told you before, I had them all in baseball. So I knew it was a pretty good bunch of kids. And, you only go through life one time, so you might as well make that ride with your kids. You know what I mean? The way I figured it. And so I did go back to Beckley Stratton and coach a couple years.
You were at Southwest youth team.
Oh, yeah. Well, me and Street were talking about it yesterday. They were talking about getting parents to help out and stuff, and we were talking about how we'd be at Woodrow and just turn around and right after practice we'd walk over to Hillwood Crescent, stop and get a hamburger or something and go to Crescent for another couple hours, and that's just what we did, and Coach Surratt would go with me, I went with me, and we had good people in the community. I mean, you're looking at people like Steve Kelly and Rick Phoebus and those kind of guys, Eric Klein, and kids that cared about, men that cared about kids, but they showed kids how to work because they come off the field, you can tell they'd been in the mines or wherever for 10 hours that day, and, they talked the walk and walked the walk. They were good people, and, you just got to surround yourself with good people. I think that's the key, but
I think one year, Ryan might have been playing C team or B team, I can't remember, but I went up to watch a friend of mine. His boy was playing for you guys, and I went up to watch his son. And me and Miller Hall and Bobby Shiflett was leaning on the fence watching. Well, Bobby was a registered official. Miller later became a registered official, but he wasn't at that time. And we're standing there, and the C team hadn't even started yet. And come find out, the officials were late. They were running late. And I don't know whether it was you or somebody came over and said, "Man, we got to get these things started on time. Hey, won't you guys come out and referee the C team?" So Bobby, he worked the backfield and Miller was defense. Well, I was the line judge, and said they'll be here any time.
Right.
So we started calling. Well, there was a lady, and I won't mention her name, but there was a lady in the stands who had a real caring voice. Her had a son to play. And every play, he's offsides, he jumped, he legal procedure, it's offsides. Well, I'm the line judge. And, I mean, you can call something every play if you want to, but it was C team, and unless it was really obvious, I wasn't calling anything. Every play, man.
You want me to tell you your name? His son was a heck of a football and baseball player, I'll tell you that.
But
good lady.
Turned around and said, "Shut up."
Well, I mean,
I got a lot of respect for you.
Well, you're out there just volunteering, and people, they think it's a World Series or something, you know what I mean? But no, we had a lot of good times. One of my favorite times was, Lord, you had, people like Blaine Mayo and Markel Ali and those kids. Once they got the ball, they were gone, you know what I mean? And shoot, they were some good games and some good kids and a lot of good learning. I remember Al Harper was a referee. That kind of, and
Al didn't call a whole lot.
Well, it was C team because I was on the field and running the offense, and I was behind the play about 30 yards, but we busted it loose, and me and Al were kind of halfway running. Al never ran, but I had a little bit up, and one of my kids just blindsided the kid, and it was 20 yards behind everything. It was bad. And Al went to reach for his flag, and I told him, I said, Al, if you throw it, you got to stop and pick that up. And he looked at me and said, you got a point. I'll never forget that. And, but, here's a guy that donated his, it was pretty much his time. You can say, you made money. Well, you make $10 back then or something. You didn't make time. You were donating your time,
Al would... when I was coaching at Park, if we had a team that wasn't extremely aggressive or whatever, I'd usually get Jim Parker and those guys. But if we had a team that was pretty aggressive, I wouldn't make a call. I got Al and his career.
Yeah, that's funny.
Kind of picked them up. But now you were also coaching. You coached wrestling and. I know you coached at Park and Beckley Stratton.
Yeah, I had a few stints. Yeah, I had a few stints with Park and had some good teams over there at Park and had some great teams at Beckley Stratton as well. Coach Surratt had that cancer in his belly that one year, and he had a great team coming back, and he had a lot of faith and pride in that group. So I told him I'd take it over while he got well, and I tell you, they ended up winning it all too. And we always were respectful anyway. I mean, wasn't like anybody feared us, but we pretty much held our own, that's for sure. We had a lot of good kids, a lot of good wrestlers.
Well, it's kind of funny how you get some groups of kids, like that bunch had parents that were Evans and Wilson and some of them guys.
Oh, yeah.
They were all involved, and you had
Snuffers. Dirk Snuffer wrestled for me, and, Chris Allen wrestled for me, and Mike Williams. Man, Mike Williams was 6'4" and 240 pounds. And I shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to on Mike. But we wrestled at the Hupco back then, and Randy Snuffer and I, we put everybody to sleep, and we went down to the lounge and just going to give it 20 minutes or so and go back up and check the rooms. Of course, every room had a parent in it, but we were sitting in the very back, and in come Mike Williams as an 8th grader, and Mike pretty much, I was going to say he raised himself, but him and his older brother. But Mike ordered up, I went to get him, and Randy kind of grabbed me and said, wait a minute. They sure enough gave him a pitcher of beer, and he saw me coming. He just pushed that. He goes, I appreciate y'all working the way you do for us. And he went up and went into bed, and I was like, oh, my gosh. Mike went on to Marshall, and played, and he's got a son right now that was at Cabell Midland that's done really good. But he followed that coach over across the into Kentucky here.
Sammons.
Yeah, he followed Luke Sammons. I don't know if it was Ohio, Kentucky he went to, but
yeah, I can't remember the name of the school we went to, but it's a football school.
Oh yeah, and if he's got any like his dad had, But I'll never forget, he'd line up and, they always did weight classes in order when you were weighing. And Mike stepped up on there and that guy said, hey man, y'all are Park. Do you not know the alphabet? And he was like, hey, we're Beckley Park. That begins with a B. And the referee looks at him and said, yes, sir. You know what I mean?
Mike had, for a big guy, he had quick feet. He was very athletic. He could have done about it. During a football season when he was in the 9th grade, he always wanted to run the ball. So, and I didn't want to take a chance of getting him hurt. We had a pretty good season going, but I promised him, the last game, we get a little lead, I'll let you run some. And he was a hoss, man.
Oh, he was a man. There's no heck of an athlete. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen. Until Doug Legursky came along, and I never got to coach Doug because I was back at the middle school with my son by that time. But, just like you said, he had feet on him. He could pull out and hit people like Doug Legursky. You knew Doug was going to be able to play at the next level because there's not many tackles pull out and hit a corner. Most corners can duke them or, juke them out of the way or not get touched. But, man, those two guys when they locked in on you, you were going to see the visitors' locker room because that's where they took you.
Well, that one year when Mike was a ninth grader, we had Ryan Clements and Lambert Kidd. I mean, for a junior high team, I think we were averaging about 250 on the line, and about, I think, 4 out of the 6 played college football.
Yeah, it's easy to look back and say now, but I think when we went to that 4-year high school, I think it was a travesty in some things because, I don't think ninth graders mentally are ready to hang out with seniors. And I don't think 8th graders are ready to be the leaders of your school either. Ninth grade kids seem to be a little bit more mature and they'd run your school for you and stuff like that. But, I thought we took a back seat a little bit when our state went to, 4 grades. But, people might not like.
I lost interest in coaching when they lost the ninth graders.
There's a big difference. So right now I'm at Park Middle School, as you know, and there's a big difference between a kid coming out of 5th grade and an 8th grader. But, but there's a lot bigger difference between that 6th grade and that 9th grade kid. The 9th grader, he's dating with girls and stuff now, and he's going into manhood.
But there's a lot of there's a few counties over in the Eastern Panhandle. They don't even have middle school.
Yeah, well.
Football. They run rec ball,
right?
And you're talking about Northern Virginia,
right?
Northern Virginia, some of them have middle schools, but rec is big. And my grandson played in a rec league, and there's 4 guys coaches on his team. I think they would want to play Division I. I mean, they was that's the most organized bunch of people, man, and well ran. And I sometimes wonder. Maybe the middle school, you just don't know. You don't know what's the best situation.
I've been doing some flex days with them, and I'm sure I'm probably the only one around here that does middle school flex days. And I don't know, maybe I'm not, but you have to milk those little 6th graders in because Lord, I've been around long enough. If I wanted to run a kid off, you could run a kid off. All you got to do is work hard, but. You got to get them time to acclimate themselves and, feel like they're part of something. But, that's the biggest challenge for me. Park, back in the day, I mean, some of your teams probably had 1,000 kids in the school then, didn't they? Or
not when I started. They did before, but when I started, it was about 750.
Yeah,
but it started going down,
we
especially after they opened
now,
independence and stuff.
So it's kind of.
Now it's only like 400 or something like that.
Yeah, I was right at 30 last year, and I've had 12 show up a regular, and I know another 4 or 5 that's going to show up, but it's kind of down, you got 340 kids in there, and you got soccer now too, what I mean? And you got that, and you got some kids that are 190 pounds and 3 foot tall thinking they're going to play basketball, so all they're going to do is wait and play basketball, and then they find out that there's other guys playing basketball too, and you lose a year with them, and I just try to give those kids a place to settle in and be a part of something.
Did you ever help coach wrestling at Woodrow?
Yeah, I was Rocky's assistant for 3 years.
I thought you were.
Yeah, I was Rocky's assistant for 3 years, and they had a lot of fun, but. I'm a big hunter, and that wrestling season, that doesn't do any favors to hunters, so I kind of got away from that. I've got my grandson into it, and my son never wrestled. He went a couple years, and he just never bought into it, and Ryan's kind of mild and meek-mannered kind of guy, but when he'd get on the football field, he's a little bit different. I thought he'd be that way on the wrestling mat, but... it just, you could tell when, kids like stuff and when they don't like it. But my grandsons, they love it, and, I like it because they have to work. It's work. It's not going and shooting baskets. It's not, throwing passes. It's man, and, you have to work.
How many grandchildren you got?
I've got 4 now. I've got
4?
3. Yeah.
Now you have 2 daughters.
I have one daughter.
One daughter.
Yeah, Haley, and she married Andy Wickline, and they've got a boy that's 6, Parker, and then they just had a little baby about 8 or 9 months ago, Addie. And so we got us the first little girl in the family. But
do they live local?
Yeah, they live here in town. Andy's a state trooper and a federal marshal, and Haley's a speech pathologist for the county. And of course, Ryan's wife is the principal at Crescent Elementary. And of course, Ryan's the principal at Woodrow. So my wife's a psychology teacher, and so there's 6. 5 of the 6 of us are in education here in the county.
Well, let's go back to the baseball now. Ryan was, of course, everybody's got to serve their time, coaching,
Sure.
With your kid.
Yeah.
You coached the minor league team, the Bears and Giants, and you guys, y'all had a pretty good bunch.
We went 63-1 with that group out there in Little League. And the one, me and Eric Klein always laugh because we were at North Myrtle Beach, and we had about 5 of our kids with us, and somebody, we're going to make them play T-ball kids against them. So, they brought the T-ball kids up. Well, the Bears lost. Okay. You know what I mean? And people were like, oh, you rigged it and you did this. You know what we did? We went to Woodrow and we picked up rocks off the softball field for Charlie Durrett, and then we lined the field for him, and then we used it to practice, and we practiced every day with those kids. And it's amazing, 5 or 6 weeks of practice, you make other people that aren't practicing at that age look silly.
Sure.
I mean, just, and everybody thinks it's got to be complicated. I talked to I forget the guy's name out of Florida State, a baseball coach down in the clinic at Myrtle Beach, and he said if he had one drill to do, he would put a tee on the mound, and that's how he thought his defense. He'd put that tee down on the plate, and every kid that wasn't a starter, they would go through and they hit that ball. And he says, you got to learn the field. You hit it, they're going to hit it. So you're not sitting there watching one guy pitch and nobody hit the ball. He said the purpose is to work on your defense. So I started putting that tee on that ball, and all our other kids, younger kids, they'd start hitting that ball. What made us make plays. But then I try to pass that on, and you don't see it a lot, but I'm telling you, it's a good, if I was coaching young kids now, that's the way I would teach it, because, like anything else, if you do 1,000 single leg shots, then you're going to be better than if you do 5, what I mean? So
that's kind of, I coached 2 years when my son, 1 year before my son even got old enough to play Little League, but we had the team that we had, every kid on our team, we made a point. We practiced all the time. One of the other coaches carried 2 pieces of plywood in the back of his truck. We could prop them up, and you could have a field anywhere.
There you go.
And but anyway, every kid on our team could bunt.
Yeah.
Most in minor league at that time, kids couldn't field bunts. They couldn't,
Don't know how to do it. No rotation.
Our kid may not get hit, but the worst kid on our team could lay a bunt down.
That's right.
And it was we beat a lot of teams. We bunt 6 times in a row.
Well, that team ended up. We went to the States twice and actually lost to a team due to run differential. We lost 4-3, and they had this big kid named Frazier went on and played some big time balls, and a Bradley kid that played down at Nitro that was really good too. But the team that beat us 4-3 ended up going to Robin Williams down in Georgia, and they ended up losing or winning that region, and then got beat in the Super region. And so we had some pretty good kids.
Well,
to be honest with you.
So you guys actually were kind of created the first travel team in Beckley. I mean, that.
As far as baseball, I don't. J.J. Tabor and them did a little bit, but I don't know whether Ryan's bunch was before them or not. That would have been in like 2003, 2004 when I was taking Ryan in them places.
Yeah.
But we'd go to Kernersville, and you get your eyes open when you go to these other places. And we went down one day and we played 4 games. And I used all 4 of my pitchers. And we went 4-0, and we thought we were something. Well, we find out later that's just the pool to seat you in the regular tournament. So now we're in the stud tournament, the stud bracket, and I have no pitching. So you learn as a coach too, you know what I mean? But it's all about traveling and being with your kids, I can't.
Well,
some of my fondest memories.
the and some there's some good things about travel teams, and there's some things that not. You always got guys that come in and make some money or want to make some money, and they promise you a lot of different things, and I mean some of these. You got to have some money, or you got to be able to get some money to be on a travel team. These kids come in. We were down in Orlando last January a year ago.
Right.
And they were having a tournament there in January. These kids come in. They got a bag. They got an individual bat. They
$1,000 outfits.
Oh, man. And staying in a nice hotel.
No, you know, all the money you make as a teacher, you can front all that kind of stuff, right? No, I was lucky because, one, we had parents. We just didn't let you come on the team. We picked parents as well, you know, and we picked people. And not to say that we didn't take care of kids. We had kids go with us that never had to pay a dime and stuff like that. But we were lucky because in this community, there's people out there that will help you. I mean, I can remember Doug Eplin. Lord have mercy. I don't know how many hotel rooms he took care of in those years. Yeah. But he wouldn't even bat an eye. He'd say, "Coach, where are you going?" And I'd tell him, he goes, "Well, what's the hotel? And I'll take care of it." But I was like, hey, you know, just people like that, you know, Randy Snuffer, you know, just if you went to him and you asked him or you told him what you were doing, they were all about it. And it still hasn't changed. There's people out there like that.
Now,
but,
Ryan,
I don't.
Did you coach high school when Ryan got to high school?
Yeah, I coached. I went with the job came open, and I helped Mark Daniels there, and for 4 years, and we ended up losing the state championship that one year when we had, I think it was Ryan's junior year or sophomore year, Matt Croker and his bunch, and and then we went back with LG Shea and Ryan and his bunch. So yeah, we had some. We lost to Nitro, and that's when they had that real good Bradley kid pitching. But people don't understand that was the last game of the year. We'd went to Spring Valley, we'd went to Huntington, and we went to Parkersburg South that week. And we were on a bus, all three of them, you know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then we turned around and went back Saturday to Nitro to play. Well, you know, how you think you felt after, 20 hours on a bus that week, and you already used all your pitching. Well, they laughed at us, they beat us like 22-1, and we didn't give up, but we just didn't have it, and who do we draw in the first round of the state championship? Nitro. They jump on us 3-0 in the second inning, and then they changed pitchers, and that's where they messed up. We ended up coming back and beating them like 7-4. Just a switch of the pitch, and we probably overachieved that day. But it's just you get guys used to winning and not giving up. Of course, we had Lanny Meadows. People don't know Dr. Meadows now. Lanny was an All-Stater 3 years in a row. A guy named Jay Thomas, who was a heck of a wrestler, he was All-State 3 years in a row, a catcher. And then Travis Parklow was there. So like 6 or 7, 8 years, Woodrow had an All-State catcher. Now, can you imagine? I mean, usually if you got a good catcher, you got a good baseball team. Everybody talks about pitching, but if you don't slow them down on them bases, then you know how it is.
Well, Woodrow, is what I can't figure out now. I mean, you've got Epling Stadium over here. They got middle school leagues. They got all kinds of clinics and camps and everybody. And it seems like Woodrow, since Mark Daniel left, they've had a different coach every year. I mean, and you got to have some consistency.
You got to be careful what you wish for. It's like anybody. Like you said, there's always that lady or that person in them bleachers hollering and, all this and all that. But Mark pretty much didn't do nothing but win when he was there. Was he out in the bars being social with the moms and dads? No. That ain't Mark Daniels. He's a modest man, and he's a worker, and he ran a good program. And I agree with you. We don't. We have a baseball team right now. I don't know that we have a baseball program going on right now. You know what I'm saying? I know that sounds kind of weird, but in this day and age now, you can work with a kid, and then the next thing you know, he's going over to Shady or he's going to Independence because somebody's promising something he shouldn't be promising him, and stuff like that. It just gets outrageous. When you don't have loyalty to your hometown, your own school, then I probably didn't want you anyway.
I know your son Ron had he likes the Yankees. What's your favorite team?
I like the Steelers. Does that tell you anything? I like the Steelers. I love coaching baseball, but man, if you're not involved, it's probably one of the most boring sports to me. I've never sat down and I've been to a couple pro games, but just to sit and watch it, to be watching it, I wasn't that guy. And, people would say, kids would ask me, Coach, who's your favorite college team or pro team? And them kids are naming all the people, and I'm like, man, I went and picked up a film for Coach Colcerto this morning at 6:30 a.m. in Princeton, and I've been watching it since 9 o'clock this morning, and it's 9 o'clock tonight. I'm not turning on a football game and watching it. I've already broke down 5 of them, and, same way on Sunday, and it's kind of weird, when they get in playoffs and stuff like that, I'd watch, but it's kind of weird. You really don't.
When you were coaching, was there any opposing coaches that you really admired, or I mean, really respected?
Yeah, I like people that had fun. And Frank Marino, who was I think Frank was down at Mount View at one time. They called it Welch back then, and then he went to Ripley. I forget. Me and Butch Lambert actually got hired at the same year.
You talking about Frank Marino?
Yeah, Frank Marino. What'd that say, Dan? I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, we went up there, and I was running the defense.
He was a character.
Oh, yeah. I was running the defense for Coach Colcerto then, and, you know how scrimmages are. Everybody's on the field and stuff. Well, he kept looking at the huddle and said, "Are you going to run?" I was like, "Man, who are you talking to? You talking to me? How you want my kids to line up? You ain't even come out of the huddle yet, And he'd tell the referee, said, "Tell him to get round up. Tell him to get lined up. Kick him off the field," and all this stuff. And I'm young, and I'm like, man. And Pete, I know Pete's just laughing the whole time because he knows what's going on. Well, I got a little fired up, and then after the scrimmage, I'll never forget Coach Marino came back by me, and he said, "Hey, I wasn't going to let him kick you out. I was just going to see if I was going to hire those guys for this first game or not." I was like, okay. Guys like that. I always thought Steve Edwards did a great job there at GW.
Yeah.
Because I always thought that he had less than everybody else in the Valley, and he always represented well.
Yeah.
He has a way. His dad had a way.
With his dad.
And they were simple, but you still had to beat them. You know what I mean? I know one year, Ryan's sophomore year, and, I'm sitting here talking about Ryan, but I guess it's my son. But one year he had like 22 tackles against them. Well, he sat and watched film just like I did. Well, he understood that when quarterback reversed out, that it was going that way. Like if he reversed out to the right, the ball was going left, and I never told old Edwards. He was like, "Man, what's that son of yours picking up on?" or something. And I was like, "Come on, man, everybody's picked that up." But he just believed in it and went, But Coach Edwards, and I always loved Robert Jefferson. I admired him, because, he didn't win with Saints. So he had to, he didn't have a bunch of choir boys down there, you know what I mean? But, man, he ran 4 plays. You knew what they was. You didn't have to scout them. I could draw them up right now what the 4 plays are, and you had to show up and beat him. And, man.
Right. What about Homer Criddle?
Yeah, Homer was he was different. We didn't communicate with them very much. And of course, you admire him, and cute little story about that. They had our number for about 10 or 11 years. They beat us straight.
Yeah.
And one year, we were younger. I was younger then. And, you work all week. You have no time to relax. So after games, I would have friends or assistant coaches or coaches, whoever. And then my wife would fix a big pot of chili or whatever. And we'd just go over and have a few Pepsis and drink some, and have some chili and stuff like that after a game. Just relax and enjoy. Well, we'd moved into town in a different place up over in Ridge Park, and it was 11:30 at night, and all the kids had the lights on. They were playing in the streets, and Ryan was a stutterer. He stuttered when he was younger, and I'd say he's like 6 or 7. But they were playing football. It's 11:30 at night, and guy opened up the window and said, "Hey, you boys know what time it is?" And I'll never forget, Ryan said, Do you know we beat Greenbrier East tonight?" And I was like, there you go. Old boy just shut his window and went back to sleep. But
I talked to Homer a couple of times. We came from South Charleston, I think, and then went to Greenbrier East, and then went up in Northern Virginia for a while. But I talked to him one time, and one of the things he made sense. It's when he was at Greenbrier East, and I said, what are you going to run on offense this year? And he said, well, I won't know. I don't know exactly. He said, I wait till, and this is before players worked out all year long.
Right.
He said, I wait to see what I got. He said, if we got the big lineman can hold the block and stuff and a quick back, we'll run out of the eye. If we got guys that can't hold the block, we run out of the tee. He said, I just wait and see.
Well, people ask me, I went over and talked to Coach Surratt yesterday for 2 hours in there, and we fiddle with different things and stuff. And of course, we do that all the time. But there's things that you want to run, and then there's things you can run. Yeah. And my biggest advice to any new coach, hey, buddy, it ain't what you know; it's what your kids know. And you talk about Butch Lambert. People say what they want to. He probably didn't run but 3 or 4 plays, but I guarantee you took the right steps when you ran those plays.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you had to take the right steps, and that gets lost, in this Atari and Nintendo. Everybody wants to throw that ball, and we can do 5 flips and do this, and you know what I mean. It all comes down to, I read an article a long time ago, and this guy, 85.4% of games are won on tackles. The team tackles the best wins, turnovers, and big plays. If you win turnovers and you make tackles, and you win those 2 battles and you win the big play battles, then 85% of the play football teams win. And, so it only stands to reason, coaching-wise, that's what you practice in practice. You know what I mean? So,
what do you think about the nowadays with the kids being able to move, get a one-time transfer, which usually turns into 3-time transfers?
Yeah, I just think it's ludicrous. It's just, I think it's destroying our community, our sense of community. Kids are more willing to, it's all about winning a game instead of being part of a program.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate enough. I've worked for a lot of good coaches. Pete Coulcerto and John Lilly. They know football. They knew football very well, and they ran good programs. And same with Coach Surratt. But the difference, and I know it's a different age now than when Pete did it, and even when John was at Woodrow. But Street just has a program going on now, what I would call a program. He's got kids showing up at 5:30 in the mornings that lift. They don't blink an eye about it. They show up, they lift, and then they go to school. They feed them twice a day. And, you sit there, that's a big, when you look there and you see your program and you see kids aren't eating good enough to get big and get strong, and then you go out of your way to provide that kind of stuff, that's, he's touching so many lives that way than people have, it ain't always about the wins and losses, and of course, like Coach Coulcerto always said, it ain't how good you are, it's how good everybody else is too sometimes,
well, true.
And we coached some years and went 6-4 and did a heck of a lot better job than we did going 8-2, you know what I mean?
One of the best teams I had in junior high went 4-4.
There you go.
And one of the worst teams I had was 7-1.
That's crazy like that, isn't it?
But everybody was, that one year, everybody was down that year.
Yeah, well.
You're at the junior high, or middle school level now at Park. Are you guys going to play on that field up there, or are you going to play out at the high school?
No, we play at Park. Yeah, we try to keep that community going. You guys did a good job of getting that thing refurbished and, going a couple years ago. And then I went into it last year, and, it was atrocious there 2 years ago. The building had been neglected, and, it's no coach's fault. I think it was lack of, effort by the county, and nobody complained enough. But after I got the job, I went over there and I looked at it, and I called Mr. Dillon, and, of course he came over and looked, and he agreed, it just like, we don't need our kids in this building. This is ridiculous. And of course other people were saying, well, that's not mold, but somehow funny, the building's demolished. Part of the building's demolished within a week. You know what I mean? So that but they've went in and they've painted it. The county has done nothing but help us out with that kind of stuff. So the whole building's painted now. there's lots of stuff we could do. I don't like the locker situation. We have no lockers. I bought some big racks last year. It's hard to find those big metal racks that aren't $60 and $70. You know, I bought some big coat hangers that were like $8 a piece. But other than that, it's a nice facility for middle school. You got a place to get dressed. You got a place, use the restroom. It's all clean and. But no, we're there. Now we'll play Beckley Stratton game. We play it at Woodrow because the high school coach wants us there, and he wants, we're all going to be Eagles after this, and so that's what we do. And actually, this year we have the midget league coming over and practicing on our field.
Okay.
So I don't know if you heard that the midget league's all under Woodrow Wilson football now. So.
It's all of them, East Beckley
and Southwest Bandits, they've all
consolidated. That's good.
And I think the effort there is to get some consistency among coaches and among the program, so it's not real good one year and real bad one year, or having to buy a bunch of stuff one year and not buying. So I think you got people like Doug Legursky and Dave Ray and those kind of people involved in it, along with Coach Surratt, and a lot of people backing them. Everything's going to be brand new, and everything's going to be the Beckley way. You know what I mean? And Coach called and said, "Hey, listen, Dale, I don't have a coach that's in the school system, and he's a high school, head coach, and you got Doug Legursky who played in the pros, and those kind of guys. Of course, everybody knew that, but they're all working men." And so they'll lift and stuff like that and probably not even get on the field till 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoons. So those young kids are going to have a place to practice. And so he asked me, and I was like, I'm not going to be the guy that stops him. You call up at the board of office and make sure that's clear and all that kind of stuff. But, it's going to ruin all that great speed I have over there if it's a muddy game or something. That's a joke if you haven't seen us play lately.
Frank Beamer for years, he didn't want turf down at Tech. And when they play Miami or one of them fast teams, he'd let the grass grow.
Oh, I tell you what, well, it'll grow over there. You know how that is. But, it's a good little atmosphere over there. You know what I mean? I like it. I like coaching there. I like the guys. I think I've got a good little staff going now. I've got, of course, Stevie Kidd. Everybody knows Stevie. And, he's as good as coach as there is around Southern West Virginia, any sport. Coaches are coaches. The sport's a sport, but a coach is a coach.
Yeah.
Rocky Powell never played soccer. He went and won soccer championships. Why? Because he's a great coach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He could coach anything. And, you talked about earlier about admiring coaches. I'd say the one I admired the most was probably Fred Hill. And he wasn't he was a local guy, but I just always admired the way Fred went about the game, the way he broke the game down, and the way he always praised kids. He was praise aloud and criticize silently kind of guy. He was a player's coach, and he was endearing to a lot of football players at Woodrow Wilson. His son, Fred Jr., is back in town, and he's actually going to coach my line this year at Park.
Great.
So, you got a guy that played at West Virginia State, coached down in the Kanawha Valley for 10 or 12 years, and, So, and of course, Jeremy Reeves is coming back over at Park, and
is
yeah, he took the special ed job back at Park just because it's a lot less demanding than at the high school, as far as the number of kids on your caseloads and stuff. And he didn't commit to a paying job, but he kind of told me that, Coach, I'll stop by. So I'm hoping that he does. Just you're only as good as the people around you. You know what I mean? And the older I get. When I was younger, I was like, well, I'm going to do this, and you guys do this. And now it's like, whatever y'all want to do, I'll do what's left. If your passion's quarterbacks, running backs, line, whatever, you go do it. I don't care. You're a good enough coach. And I'll, if it's defensive ends, I'll do defensive ends. You know what I mean? Or whatever. But just to have them around, And so I just think, time-wise at the high school, it's so demanding, and I've got these young kids, grandsons, and say what you want to, I'm going to watch them before I kick it. You know what I mean? And sure. I still think helping, at the middle school, I'm still helping coach out at the program, helping him with the program by not trying to do too much. And, we do the same passing tree. We use the same terminology. So, our program at Park is very similar to Woodrow's in the sense that when our kids leave Park, I always thought our job was to get them ready for Woodrow, and physically ready and mentally ready. And mentally ready, if they do the same thing that we're doing, where we're doing this parts of the same thing they're doing. We can't do everything they do naturally, but our core philosophy and our plays are the same.
Now you got Mike Folks over there helping too.
Mike got a paid job this year as well, and and I'm hoping he's able to make it. Because last year I had Pat Williams, a heck of a coach, but Pat was at the elementary school, you see, and heck, we'd be getting off the field and he'd just be getting out of school. You know what I mean? So I kind of it's like, Pat, I gotta have somebody. You know what I mean? I love you, but I can't have a coach that shows up the last 15 minutes, you know what I mean? Yeah. So Michael was the only one that applied for that, and he got that. And, of course, kids love, he's at Crescent where my daughter's the principal, and he's a cook there. So I'm hoping he's able to get over in time. And, you got a guy that's been around a while, and kids love Michael, and I'm hoping that he goes out and you know what a difference 2 or 3 in middle school would do. So, junior high, you could imagine middle school.
Now you and Ryan are both in the Woodrow Wilson Hall of Fame also.
Yes, sir.
And how do you feel working for your son? he's your boss now.
Yeah, well, Ryan's got enough problems. He really don't. I'll guarantee he comes down and he looks down the D wing and he sees me and Coach Surratt there, and he goes and evaluates the rest part of the school. You know what I mean? Because you know how it is, man. You want to feel secure in your own skin and your own school and stuff like that. And I'm not knocking women, but you got to have a man pretty much stationed certain places nowadays, because if you don't, then you're not really being a man and taking care of, the way life should be. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you're sitting there protecting people when we're in that situation, but, I've been doing it 35 years. I know how to teach driver's ed. I know how to go that, and I'm not going to embarrass Woodrow Wilson. I'm surely not going to embarrass my last name. So working for Ryan, I see him maybe once or twice a day, to be honest with you, He's
kind of like anybody.
It's crazy.
Like the old Ross Hutchins. I worked for Ross Hutchins, and Ross, you never had an issue with Ross as long as you did your job.
Oh, yeah.
If you didn't do your job, you're going to hear about it.
Well, see, I tell you, one of the favorite guys I like working for was Ron Cantley. Everybody, Ron's hard. There wasn't nothing hard about that, man. You did your job.
Sure.
I remember when I first took the head job over at Beckley Stratton there, and I kept going back and forth because there's a protocol. You get an athletic director and get it signed by the principal to buy stuff. Well, you know me, I went out in the community and I probably raised $10,000 or $15,000 real quick to buy all new stuff and all that. And I kept going back and having him sign. He goes, "You got the money in the thing?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, you ask yourself, is it good for kids and good for your program? If it is, then you don't have to come see me about it." I said, "Okay." And it made sense, you know what I mean? But, Ron, he shows you that if you stick to something and you stick to that course, the outcome will be pretty much what you want it to be. But you can't vary from it. You can't be tough one day and not the next day. You can't be pick up trash one day and not pick it up the next day. And, just little things that, but you always felt safe. The kids were safe and the school was ran really good. But, I always admired Mr. Cantley and the way he ran stuff because he was his own man.
Yeah.
And I like people like that. I don't have a problem with people like that. I had
the privilege to work with him. He was assistant principal, and Lester Vault. Lester Vault was kind of the same way. Lester run a tight ship, but you never had an issue if you did your job.
Right, yeah.
And he didn't mind spending money if you raised it or, you helped get it. You spend it. But
well, that's, it's hard to go to parents and have them volunteer to do stuff, and then you turn around and it goes into school and you never see it. I'm kind of lucky where I'm at. Coach Harris or Mr. Harris over there, I call him Coach Harris, Dr. Harris. He's the head wrestling coach at Tech. So he's sports oriented. He knows what it's all about and how you do stuff. And he's been nothing but great to me. Him and Laura Shute now, and they made me feel good over there. And I spend about probably half the time I would at the high school. But I'll still be there Friday nights with those guys, and I won't say a lot to street. But if I see something, I've got the relationship. I can walk by and say something. without him. Hey, I was like, hey, now you watch that right guard, I'm going to tell you, he's taking you to the play. But those guys are so entrenched through the game, they can't see stuff like that sometimes, People up in the booth, you're sitting there worried about 2 plays down the road, and you're not. So, I mean, you scouted, you pick up things. And
well, the football, the technology and stuff has changed so much. I mean, now you got the huddle. I mean, you don't. Back in the old days, like I said, I used to scout a little bit, and then they would trade films, and now you can just see it on the screen. And
it's unreal. Watch it on the sidelines during the game.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It's sidelines on the game, and I'll never forget old Ted Spadero. He was one of my favorites, too. I don't know how I forgot about Ted, but Ryan used to ride with me when I'd go, and he'd meet. Ted and I would meet up at Flat Top and switch things and talk for about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, just football and life. And he watched Ryan come all the way up. It was pretty cool. You know what I mean? And, that was pretty interesting. Ted's a good man.
One of my favorite people was Joe Hicks.
Yeah.
And Joe, he hated Bluefield. And when Joe went to Blacksburg, and then I started coaching the junior high, Blacksburg Junior High would play Bluefield the week before we did. So they'd play on Thursday night. By Saturday morning, he would have me film of Bluefield. And he'd tell me what to look for. And he was a high school coach.
Right. There you go.
He said, you got to do this. Do that. You can beat these guys.
He wanted them winning.
Oh, yeah.
Getting used to winning.
And he was one of the most remarkable people, most intense people I've ever been around. I ran in. He was running in a race down in Hinton, and I was down there running, and I said, Coach, he's about ready to retire from football. I said, what are you going to do now if you quit football? And he said, I'm trying to get a coaching job of a golf team. And he said, could you imagine the golfers doing push-ups and running like that? I said, I don't think he ever got that.
I got 2 stories about him. I never had, worked with him or anything like that, but being around Coach Concerto, you hear stories. But back to the guy up at Ripley, Marino, they said Joel went down to They went down to Mount View to play, or Welch or whatever, and they had a guy named Raymond Isabel, I think. What's the name? Ingram. And then there was Isabel that was so really good too. But anyway, he said, before the game, Joel would never talk to anybody. He'd walk the field and stuff like that. Well, he said old Frank came up to him. Pete was telling me this. He said Frank walked by him, and one time he ever heard Coach Hick say something, he said, hey, man, there's Holwood over here. He said, I'll lose my tailback in there. And he said, Frank Marino never missed a beat. He said, don't worry about Bo Isbell. I'll find him. And I was like, okay, that's a classic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. They had Isabel down there, too. The Isabels at Bluefield used to drive me crazy every year, man.
But he said that, and I thought that was hilarious. If we had a book,
oh, yeah.
I mean, if we had a book that we just wrote down 50 years ago, it'd have been a bestseller probably by now. And it just quotes and just funny things that's happened.
Oh yeah. One other thing, I was thinking about the Ingram guy. Mount View was really tough that year. And this was when I was scouting for Woodrow, but it was in the 90s, I guess. Mount View went to the state championship that year.
You had a Borowski playing quarterback.
Lost to Brooke. Brooke beat them 14-7. But anyway, the game I was scouting, Woodrow was supposed to be playing. It's either Mount View or man the next week, but Mount View was playing man that week, and the place was packed. I mean, you couldn't get the people. Not only were all the bleachers full, they was lined up 3 or 4 deep all the way around the field. And so the guy, I'm up in the stands. And I got this stuff. Well, I really don't want nobody to know that. Because I'm sitting there. And so I'm trying to keep things kind of quiet. Well, the guy comes in, makes the announcement. Secondary schools does not allow smoking in the bleachers. Well, all of a sudden, everybody in the place lights up a cigarette, man. And I'm going,
yeah, let's go ahead and say that.
Well, the game, and this is when Tootie Carter was down at Man. And the game was knockdown dragon. And it was wow. And it was tight. And it come down the last play of the game. Man is ahead. It's inside about the 15, and Mount View's got the ball. And Ingram, the quarterback, who looks like a well-proportioned fullback, he runs the ball around the end and into the end zone. And the referee blew him out about 2 feet before he got to the end zone, and the time was run out.
Oh, Lord. That was hard to get out of that stadium, I bet.
They had to have state police. They had to bring guys in to get the officials off the field. I was scared to go anywhere.
Right, just sit tight.
I didn't move until at least 3,000 people had done left.
That's crazy, yeah.
But that was, and then, and so Mount View, they lost that game, and then they, like I said, they come back and got in the state championship. It was wild, but yeah, you could, I know as many years as you've coached, you could write.
Well, I can tell you a story goes back to Mount View. They were actually, people don't realize this, they were one of the first real spread teams around, really? As far as in southern West Virginia. And they had that Borowski kid, and they came out and shoot and spread, and we hadn't seen stuff like that when I was, and we were always a 4-4 team. And, I was like, we got to come up with plan B anyway. We're not going to be able to play man all night or zone all night. So I had the bright idea, of course, when you had people like Matt Morris, the freaks of nature, when athlete-wise and stuff, so, and his older brother, Ryan. We had some studs back in them days, Jamar Dunnigan, and, world-class speed and stuff. And so I came up with the bright idea, we put a 3x3. Well, I just moved my 2 tackles, and I left one end in. Well, the other end was Matt Morris. I could move him out, and he'd cover anybody man for man. It didn't matter, you know what I mean? So it ended up being a 3-5-3. Okay, and you probably don't believe this is where it's going, but we were playing softball, and Coach Kidd, I wasn't playing. Coach Stevie Kidd was playing down at Fitzpatrick, and he called me and said, "Hey, can we get some film on that Borowski kid? Do we have our film? Because what's the guy up at Marshall now? I don't know, he just went blank. Gibson. He was playing with them, and he wanted film. He was at Glenville at the time with Rodriguez, and he wanted to see that boy play. Whether he's good enough to coach and that kind of stuff. Well, I got a call on Monday and said, "Hey man, what kind of defense is this you're running here, and what are you doing?" And I was like, well, I just call it a 3-5-3. And I said, we're blitzing all 3. So we still got 6 people in the block. I'm sending them one way, the line goes the other way, and we do all that stuff. Well, 3 years later, people at WVU, and you're hearing about a 3-5-3 defense and stuff. And I'm sure other people's done it before, but it was just kind of interesting. Kind of interesting, yeah.
Name it after.
No, well, I was too stupid to do it, you know what I mean? I was just trying to beat Mount View.
Well, listen, Coach, man, I appreciate you coming by. Enjoyed talking with you.
I appreciate what you're doing here. And
we got a lot more we could talk about, so we'll have to come back sometime.
Well,
and good luck this year.
Thank you. Just try to make them overachievers. You know what I mean? I'm gonna take our team, and every year if kids overachieve, then I figure you're doing something. That's my whole goal. It's just to overachieve in life and.
35 years of coaching, you've influenced a lot of kids and positively, and I'd like for you to stay in the business a while.
Yeah, well, I plan on it. I'd like to watch a couple grandkids.
You got grandkids coming through. You got to be there.
I don't know if they're going to play football or not.
Yeah, well, you got to let
Jax is athletic enough, but I've been around long enough to, just I'll teach him what he needs to know when he gets in 6th and 7th grade. Now my mind might change after I watch the midget league program now. You know what I mean? This year and the organization and stuff. But if it looks like it's going to roll the right way, we'll get him involved. It's just fun. Anytime you're with kids, you're having fun. Well, good luck, and appreciate you.
Anybody else out there that'd like to be on our program, you can hit me up at awbennett50@gmail.com, and we'll get you on here. And remember, until next time, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. And this is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.